But first, I don't know about you, but sometimes I read through the headlines and I wonder how on earth we ended up where we are. People frightened to speak their mind, cancelled if they do, piled on with abuse from the self-righteous Twitter mob, the elites and the haters. Is this really what generations before us sacrificed so much to build? A nation at war with itself. Sadly, it's not an Australian affliction alone. It's a madness right across the Western world. It's as though once proud to go forth with values that made humanity better, equality, freedom of conscience, of speech, the rule of law, democracy, we now so hate the civilisations that these values have spawned that we're either tearing them down or sitting passively by, letting others do it. Here's a handful of examples from just the past few weeks alone. Wearing a tie in the Parliament isn't a sign of respect anymore. It's phallic. It's a colonial noose. It's an outdated symbol of white male rule. So says those buying into the latest debate in New Zealand after a Maori MP was thrown out by the Speaker for breaching standing orders on the dress code. In Britain, the Brighton and Sussex University hospital system, it's a really big hospital system, well, it's put out a new inclusion edict that has officially banned the term maternity services department because the offending word maternity is linked to women. Instead, it's now to be known as the perinatal services department. But that's not the worst of it. Breastfeeding is out. Well, at least the word is. I'm assuming we've still got breast milk, but it's now to be called chest feeding. You can't say mother. It's now just the gender-neutral term of birthing parent. And even the word breast milk is banned when surely breast milk is nothing more than a statement of fact. But it's too been replaced. It's either to be called human milk, chest milk, or the ridiculous and wordy milk from the feeding parent. Feeding parent. You can't make this stuff up. And if you thought mothers were hardly done by there, well, the poor old dad under these new rules is completely written out, replaced instead by co-parent or the dystopian second biological parent. Do you think, as I do, our grandparents would come back today? They wouldn't recognise the world we live in. But this isn't the end of it. Still in the UK, MI6, Britain's international spy agency, well, they're under fire for announcing yesterday it will now abolish the ban on foreign-born spies so it can improve the ethnic diversity, it says, of recruits. Not for any other reason than ticking a box on diversity. And this is given the ban on foreigners in MI6 had been a national security decision. It was in at least a part protection against double agents. It's not as if the UK, is short of locals who would fit a diversity brief. I mean, London's one of the most multicultural cities in the world. This decision preferences some arbitrary diversity quota ahead of national security imperatives. Tell you what, I bet Iran or Russia doesn't have diversity targets on their spies. Over in the US, in the West Coast state of Oregon, the New York Post reported on last Thursday about a case of a high school principal slammed by parents in the Sherwood School District for declaring that, quote, education as a whole was built on the system of oppression and white supremacy. Now, her critics accused her of pushing a BLM Marxist view. Shouldn't, they say, be part of the school system? And fair enough. If the link between BLM and a Marxist agenda sounds overblown, here's Black Lives Matter leaders themselves in their own words.
We actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists.
Visit the Black Lives Matter website and read the list of demands to get a sense of how deep a transformation they seek. One of those demands proclaims, quote, "We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another."
This is their own words, their own website. It's not about race anymore. It's about the nuclear family. Yet not even the left, though, is safe from its own hate. 10 days ago, a teacher in San Francisco wrote an op-ed in the San Francisco Chronicle fuming that by turning up to the inauguration of President Biden in a brown parka and those very famous now home-knitted mittens that were seen everywhere on social media, Senator Bernie Sanders, the teacher, wrote, and I quote, manifests privilege, white privilege, male privilege and class privilege in ways she said her students could see and feel. According to this teacher, Sanders' crime was that people without his privilege would never be able to turn up to an inauguration dressed like that. Could it get any madder? An icon of the hard left what? He's now Bernie Sanders accused of white privilege because he chose not to dress in an expensive suit and wear a tie. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, back in New Zealand in the Parliament, the left thinks that no one should wear a tie. What about the attacks on Walid Ali this week for an interview he did a couple of years back where he pressed Heredia Lumumba over his allegations of racism at the Collingwood Football Club? In the interview, Ali asked Lumumba to provide more detail about his allegations, and in a sign that the haters are now quite prepared to eat their own in this topsy-turvy new world of indignation, when the interview reappeared on social media, Walid Ali was pilloried for questioning Lumumba. So much so that Channel 10 suddenly removed all earlier trace of the interview from their archive. Now, for the record, I don't believe Collingwood is a racist club. Maybe, and I think certainly, there are things that can be improved, but I don't believe it's a racist club, and I don't believe the AFL is a racist code, nor do I believe Australia is a racist society. What we are, though, is deeply confused about right and wrong, and rapidly losing any mooring in common sense and the instinct to give people the benefit of the doubt. Just look at some of the other things making headlines this week. Like Bananas Australia scrapping its long-standing Mother of the Year award because that might upset other types of caregivers. This decision by Bananas doesn't lift up the others, it tears down the worth of mums. You've got to wonder where we're headed as a country when apologies aren't accepted, history's not respected, and common sense has gone into hiding. Well, I'll give you this commitment on my program at least. We won't shirk telling you the truth as best we can discern it about what our country needs if it's to be as good in the future as our country's been in the past. It's called leadership. And at every level, that seems to have gone missing just when we need it most. Where is the leader, any leader, who calls these things out for what they are? My sense is that we're looking for someone who, like you, like me, has had enough of what now passes for culture in this country. And for all our sakes, let's hope we find that leader sooner rather than later.